The woods around Pinecrest Asylum had always been a place of quiet dread, even in broad daylight. Yet, it was during the night that it truly came alive with stories, rumors, and those mysterious sounds that no one dared to fully explain. I'd heard whispers about Pinecrest all my life, but never took them seriously. After all, what were a few urban legends compared to the thrill of exploration? That night, my brother Aaron and I were intent on uncovering the secrets of the long-abandoned asylum for ourselves. The air was crisp as we walked, our boots crunching on the forest floor, the evening fog thickening around us with every step. The outline of the asylum loomed up ahead, its silhouette dark against the pale glow of the moon. It was just as the locals described. The iron gates hanging off their hinges, the broken windows that let the night air whistle through the building like a ghostly wail. The place had been abandoned for decades, but to us, it felt like we were stepping into a forgotten time. Aaron, always the more confident one, led the way. You know, the stories about this place are probably just exaggerated. We'll be in and out. No ghosts, no monsters. His voice was light, but there was a certain unease in his stride that he tried to hide. I could see it, though, his usual bravado faltering under the weight of the unknown. I wasn't so sure. The legends told of cruel treatments of the mentally ill, of patients who had been locked away and forgotten, subjected to horrific experiments, the kind of secrets that would never leave the walls of Pinecrest. But still, I pressed on, the pull of curiosity stronger than any lingering doubts. We pushed open the rusted gates, the screech of metal against metal breaking the silence like a scream in the dark. A shiver ran up my spine, but I shrugged it off. We were here for adventure, and adventure didn't wait for fears to vanish. The asylum's main building stretched out before us, its walls crumbling, the air thick with the smell of decay and rot. I flicked on my flashlight, its beam slicing to the darkness, revealing faded paintings on the walls, broken furniture, and the detritus of years of neglect. My heart raced a little faster now, not from fear, but from the raw, unfiltered sense of entering a place that had been forgotten by time, and by everyone, it seemed. Aaron pushed forward, his flashlight catching strange stains on the floor and walls. "Hey, look at this," he said, crouching near a doorway. "This place is a lot worse than I expected." "Yeah," I muttered, following him. "But that's the fun of it, right?" I forced a laugh, trying to lighten the mood. We ventured deeper into the asylum, the silence becoming oppressive, pressing against us from all sides. The air was stale, heavy with something else I couldn't quite place, as if the building itself was holding its breath. We were about to head down one of the many dark hallways when the first sound pierced the stillness, a soft, low whistle. I froze. Aaron glanced at me, his brow furrowing. "What was that?" I opened my mouth, about to dismiss it, when the whistling came again, this time louder, sharper. It wasn't the wind, I realized. The wind didn't whistle in that way. It was almost as if it was coming from the walls themselves, as though something was trapped inside, trying to get out. That's not normal," I whispered, my voice trembling slightly. Aaron laughed nervously, his attempt to sound brave falling flat. "It's just an old building. Probably a bird or something. Let's keep going." But my heart pounded in my chest, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone. The whistling continued, rising and falling, a tune that seemed eerily familiar yet unsettling at the same time. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, it stopped. An eerie, suffocating silence descended, broken only by the sound of our breaths. We both turned toward the source of sound, and there, in the dim light, we saw it, a figure. It was tall, impossibly tall, standing at the end of the hallway, shrouded in shadow. Its hair hung in matted strands around its face, moving as if it had a life of its own, twisting and writhing. And in its hands it clutched nothing but the continued sound of the whistling. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. My body locked in place as the figure began to move, gliding toward us with an unnatural fluidity. The whistling never breaking, just growing louder and more insistent with each step. "Aaron, we need to go." I managed to croak, but my voice was barely a whisper against the overwhelming sound. But Aaron, ever the skeptic, stood frozen as well, his flashlight trained on the figure, his hand shaking so violently that the beam flickered. It was as though we were both hypnotized by the eerie tune, unable to break free from the chilling melody that filled the air. And then, without warning, the figure vanished. It was as if it had melted into the darkness, leaving behind only the sound of the whistling, which now seemed to be coming from all around us, echoing off the walls. I spun around, desperate to find an exit, but it felt as though the walls were closing in on us. The whistling was louder now, distorted and warped, almost mocking, as if the figure was laughing at us from somewhere we couldn't see. I grabbed Aaron's arm, pulling him toward the nearest door. We have to get out of here. But as we reached the door, it slammed shut with a force that rattled the very foundation of the asylum. The noise reverberated through the hallway, and panic surged through me. We tried everything, pounding on the door, pulling at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. The whistling never stopped. It followed us, taunting us, growing louder with each passing moment. We were trapped. The shadows around us seemed to press in tighter, closing off every escape. My mind raced, heart thundering in my chest. I could feel the cold breath of the figure against my neck, could hear the whisper of the wind as it twisted through the cracked walls, the sound of the whistle now so sharp it felt like a physical force. Suddenly, with a sharp crack, the door to the hallway exploded open, and we tumbled into the open air, gasping for breath. I looked around frantic and saw that the asylum, despite its decayed state, seemed somehow alive. The night was deep, the fog thick, and the only thing visible was the outline of the asylum behind us. And there, standing in one of the broken windows, was a figure. Its face was impossible to make out, shrouded in darkness, but its eyes, those eyes gleamed with an unsettling awareness. The whistling continued, faint but clear, and for a long moment neither of us moved. Finally, Aaron pulled me away, muttering, "We're leaving. Now!" We didn't look back again. We couldn't. The whistling echoed in our minds long after we had left the asylum behind, and as we walked away, we could still feel its presence, waiting in the shadows, watching, always waiting. Neither of us spoke a word about what had happened after that night, but every time the wind picks up, I swear I hear it again, the faint, haunting whistle of the shadows, calling from Pinecrest. I've always been drawn to places that reek of mystery, especially the kind of mystery that clings to the walls of abandoned buildings. But this place was something else entirely. The asylum at Maple Ridge, long since forgotten by most, was never something I should have ventured into. And yet, here I was, standing at its decaying threshold. The wind howled through the hollow windows, carried with it a faint smell of decay, and the eerie silence of the place made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. The rumors, the whispers, they'd never left the town. People spoke of ghosts, of dark rituals, of pain and suffering so profound it lingered in the very stones of the asylum. I had heard it all, but I'd never given it much thought, until the messages started. Strange calls in the dead of night, anonymous letters that seemed to come from nowhere. They were cryptic, filled with warnings, but all pointing to one undeniable truth. Something had happened here, something far darker than the history books dared acknowledge. And I, Julianne Moss, had made it my mission to uncover what that was. I set foot inside the asylum on a foggy evening in October. The sun had long since set, but the mist in the river hung low in the air, clinging to the ground like a living thing. The moment I crossed the threshold, I felt the weight of the building. It was as if the very air inside was different, thick with an oppressive energy. My flashlight flickered on, casting weak beams of light against the cracked walls. The grand lobby, once pristine and welcoming, was now nothing more than a dark, decaying shell. Broken windows allowed the wind to howl through the empty space, and the smell of mildew clung to everything. I began my journey deeper into the heart of the asylum, every step echoing in the stillness. The floors creaked beneath me, sending my mind racing with thoughts of what might be watching me from the shadows. The place felt alive in a way that unsettled me. Every corner I turned, every room I entered, felt like it was waiting for me. As I passed a rotting administrative office, a cold draft swept across my neck, causing my skin to crawl. My pulse quickened, and I turned, expecting to find something, someone, but there was nothing, just the emptiness of the building. The upper floors were where the real horrors were said to have occurred, where Dr. Thorne, the asylum's head psychiatrist, had conducted his experiments. They said he had pushed the limits of human suffering, performing cruel, often fatal, tests on his patients. He was said to have been obsessed with the mind, seeking to unlock its darkest secrets, but instead, he had only created chaos and pain. The thought of what I might uncover kept me going. I had to find the truth, no matter the cost. The temperature dropped significantly as I made my way up the staircase, and the further I went, the more paranoid I became. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Something was watching me. Every creak of the building seemed to draw closer. Every whisper of the wind felt like a voice speaking directly into my ear. Then, without warning, my phone rang. I glanced at the screen. It was an unknown number. My stomach twisted. I answered it. "Leave now." The voice rasped, its tone distorted, as if speaking through a broken radio. "Or you'll never leave." My heart hammered in my chest, and for a moment, I hesitated. But I couldn't leave, not after everything I had been through to get here. I had to know the truth. I ignored the voice and continued my investigation, determined not to let fear rule me. I came across a door, old, rusted chains wrapped around its handle. My curiosity piqued. I pulled the chains apart with all my strength, the metal scraping loudly against the door. Behind it, a narrow staircase led down into the darkness of the basement. My flashlight barely cut through the thick air, and the smell, God, the smell was overwhelming. It was a rotting, fetid stench, the scent of death itself. As I made my way down the stairs, I was careful not to trip over the piles of debris that littered the ground. The basement was worse than I could have imagined. Abandoned surgical tools, caked in dried blood, lay scattered across the floor. Faded patient records were strewn about, some torn, others barely legible. The sight sent a chill through me. This was where the worst of Dr. Thorne's experiments had taken place. It was clear that nothing about this place had been humane. But what really caught my attention was a photo on the wall. A portrait of Dr. Thorne, standing next to a woman. She had long, dark hair, and her eyes seemed to stare right through the camera. A chill ran down my spine as I looked at her. She was strikingly familiar. She looked almost exactly like me. I couldn't breathe. Was this a coincidence? Was it possible that someone had once tried to replicate my image for some twisted reason? The ground beneath me trembled, and I stumbled back, my heart racing. The building seemed to groan, as though it was alive, reacting to my presence. And then the lights went out. The darkness swallowed me whole. My flashlight flickered, the beam barely cutting through the black void. In the silence, I could hear them. Whispers. Soft at first, like the faint rustle of leaves. But then they grew louder, more urgent, swirling around me. They were coming from every direction. Voices, so many voices, broken and pained. The sounds of the lost, the forgotten, the tortured souls that had once walked these halls. They spoke of suffering, of pain, of death. I couldn't breathe. The weight of it was too much. It pressed against my chest, crushing the air from my lungs. I stumbled back, my feet catching on the debris, but I couldn't escape it. I couldn't escape the whispers. They were closing in on me, their voices filling my mind, drowning out everything else. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the weight lifted. The whispers stopped. I didn't wait to find out why. I turned and ran, my heart pounding in my ears. I had to get out of there. I had to leave before I became just another ghost trapped in this hellhole. My flashlight flickered one last time before going out entirely, plunging me into total darkness. I couldn't see, couldn't breathe. My panic was suffocating. The next morning, search teams arrived at the asylum. They had come looking for me, but I was gone, vanished. There was no trace of me, no sign of my presence in the asylum. My camera, the only evidence of my visit, was found near the old basement entrance. But the last photo on it, my last photo, was the most chilling of all. It showed the photo of Dr. Thorne and the woman on the wall. But something had changed. The woman in the photo now had my exact features. my face staring back at me, trapped in a frame as if I had always been there. I had become part of the asylum's twisted history. And now, no one speaks of Julianne Moss. I am nothing more than another whisper in the halls of the Maple Ridge Asylum. Another lost soul. Another story to haunt those foolish enough to seek the truth.